All right. So I know that I am technically a little bit at a minute or so early, but I wanted to make sure this time, last time we did this stream, there were so many problems. So I'm just going to be making sure all is good all around me. And we are at officially 7:45 Central Standard Time. Howdy doody gals and pals, it's me, Tiffany, and welcome to the Choose the Mouse channel. If you're not a regular viewer of our stuff and you're just dropping in for this special story time, I want to welcome you here. Most of our other videos are typically gaming channel related videos, but this is a special series that I've done kind of combining it with my Facebook author page and over here on our YouTube channel. Hi, welcome here. I'm glad you're able to finally make it. I do want to encourage you guys, if you are here and you're in the chat, feel free to say hi. I'm just gonna do some greeting stuff to give people a chance to do that. If this is your first time watching a live stream and you're not sure how to work the chat, typically, if you are on a mobile device, normally you have to be in the actual YouTube app in order to comment on the stream. Hi, welcome, Jen. For some reason, if you try to go to the website on a mobile device, it doesn't bring up the chat feature. At least that's what I've heard from other people. So if you're on a mobile device, you're going to want to be in the YouTube app in order to actually comment back and forth. On a regular laptop or desktop, it should be fine from the actual website. So yes, this is Waves of Captain Verity Jones. It is a pirate adventure story that we've been doing, a choose your own adventure. We are currently starting chapter 4 this time around. I want to ask real quick, is the music that I have playing in the background yes, we're on a tablet. Is the music in the background at an okay level? Let me know if at any point the sound seems to be drowning it out. I just kind of want it as an ambiance. I don't want it to be something that I'm having to fight for you to actually hear me versus the instrumentation. I think I just made up a word. So, last we left off in this story, we had Jax, who had just lost a gambling attempt against Davies, better known as the Gravedigger of the Sannleika crew. He felt that Davies is going to be able to give him some inside information. You don't even hear the music. Okay, that's good to know. Let's get some. I'm gonna wait half a second. Let me know. Is that coming through okay for you guys? Again, it's going to be lower. It's not going to be super loud, but I don't want it to be overbearing at the same time, or non-existent. Anyway, okay, so I'll keep wrapping up the last time. So Davies was going to have some insider information on this mysterious figure known as Kellyeth, who is this, thank you for letting me know we're good, this 7-foot giant of a man who is the benefactor for their latest voyage. Now, on the Sannleika, these pirates are sailing the seas, which where it is illegal for them to do so, under the guise of just being specific merchants. It's in a world in which the merfolk, better known as the gillies, are in charge of the entire world, and much of those who are the land dwellers have to abide by the laws within the ocean. So, Jax's attempt to learn information about Kellyeth got him in trouble because he lost his bet to Davies. The next thing that went about in the story is that he got in trouble because Sedona and the other crew were trying to meet with him to talk about a map he was able to get. Hi, Brianna. Hi, Jen. And again, he wasn't found doing what he was supposed to be doing. This map is a very special map. It is something that's rare in this world. They can't always get a hold of it. Now, the thing about this whole story series is that it's a choose-your-own-adventure one in which I read through the chapter, and then when we get to the end, there will be different options that you as the viewers get to vote on to decide where this story goes next. The votes last time were the name of Shurik's cat that is aboard the ship, which ended up being Mr. Whiskers, was the overall vote that won there. And the other question was, who should Jax go to for help, because he discovered that his map, his very, very precious map, had been stolen from him. And it was, should he go and ransack Kellyeth's room immediately on his own because he felt that that's who had stolen it? Should he go straight to the captain and let her know what was happening? Or should he go to his friend Sedona and ask for her help? Well, the votes came in and the response was Sedona. Sedona was the one that you guys chose for him to go to. So that is where we are currently in the story. Jax has discovered that the map is gone. And we're going to figure out who, or at least we're going to try to figure out who took it and see how Sedona might help. So here we go. Starting the story. And as I read the story, I'm just going to go through and read. You guys feel free to continue to comment as I read and interact with each other. You're more than welcome to do that. I won't be responding to comments as I'm reading. I'll look at them and respond after I'm done reading this chapter. So let us begin. Smoke billowed in the narrow galley, soaking the air in the zesty scent of grilled fish and lemons. Poking his head in the doorway, Jax caught sight of Sedona beside the far wall. She had pushed a crate up under the porthole and was pulling on a small rigging that pried open its cover. "How many times do I have to tell you, Pa? Open this before you start your cooking." Eason stood over his grill, brushing a sweet glaze across the skewers laid on the rack above the flame.
"Meh, that's what I have you for."
Sedona rolled her eyes as she tied the rope in place. "I can't come down here every morning. What'll Captain think if I'm late to my shift on the helm?"
"She'll think, what a lucky gal that Sedona is to have a pa who specially makes her breakfast each morning."
Eason smiled broadly as he grabbed the finished skewer and offered it to his daughter. Sedona licked her lips for a moment, then shook her head firmly, the waves of her red hair bouncing around her face. "No, Pa, you can't. I won't be having the crew soured against me because the cook keeps giving me all this special treatment." She reached out her hand and gently pushed Eason's hand back. "I eat like everyone else, when everyone else does from here on out, okay?" Eason's bright smile dropped into a disappointed frown. Crestfallen, he sighed heavily.
"I suppose you're right, Donnie. Like always. You can't blame your pa for wanting the best for his little one now, can you?"
Sedona's face melted into a loving smile. "I know you mean well, and I do appreciate it, really." Eason held out the skewer once more.
"How about this, Donnie? Let this be the final pa and daughter breakfast, eh? I mean, it's already cooked. Be ashamed to waste it."
Sedona chuckled and accepted the food. "Fine, but you promise this is the last time."
"On my honor as a pirate."
Sedona raised an eyebrow at him.
"And as your pa."
She nodded, finally satisfied, and took a large bite out of the fish. Jax cleared his throat and stepped into view. Eason looked over his shoulder with a wide grin.
"Well, good morning, lad. You're up early. Come to get a jump start on your duties."
Sedona's posture stiffened and face soured as she locked eyes with him. Jax felt a twist in his gut. Apparently, she was still angry with him from last night. "Don't be fooled, Pa. I'm sure Cabin Boy's here just to deliver his latest excuse for shirking his tasks." Sedona placed a hand on her hip and looked down her nose at him. "Needing to get a dice rematch, eh, Cabin Boy?"
"Donnie,"
Eason warned from the side. Jax grit his teeth, then breathed out slowly, releasing the tension across his back. "Look, Sedona, I screwed up, okay? Big time. I thought I could Davies to get Spill what he knew about Kelly, and I screwed that up too. But I'm not wrong about him, Sedona. The map's gone missing, and I just know it has to be because of him." Sedona's eyes widened as her father's cheery demeanor faded away. "You lost the map?" Jax rolled his eyes. "I didn't lose it. Someone stole it, and I'm betting that someone is Kelly." Sedona's lips pressed into a thin line as she handed the remainder of her skewer back to Eason. "Guess we're gonna have to get it back, then."
"Donnie, what are you—"
"You'll cover for us, right, Pop?" She smiled at him sweetly.
"Cover?
Don't worry, we shouldn't be too long, just in case I'm late to the helm or if Captain wants to see if her cabin boy is serving out his punishment. She patted the ox-like man on his arm. Turning to Jax, she grabbed the sleeve of his faded blue overcoat and pulled him after her out of the galley. Wait, I didn't mean, shouldn't we? Sedona, stop! Jax twisted out of her grip, causing them to pause in the tight hall. I was looking for support in talking to the captain. Sedona rolled her eyes. Liar. If you wanted to go to the captain, you would have. She turned to him and poked a finger into his chest, a rueful smile on her lips. You came looking for me because you knew it's better to get all the dirt on this guy. You're not looking for just the map, are you? Jack sighed and readjusted his overcoat. Do you have to be right all the time? Sedona winked at him and inclined her head for him to follow. Come along, cabin boy. We have searching to do. Thankfully, Kellyeth was sharing Shurik's quarters temporarily, which meant the two of them could stay hidden below deck as they maneuvered their way in that direction. That also meant that once they did get there, no one could stand watch without it being too obvious something was up. Shurik had long since secured his sleeping quarters so that he could always distinguish someone's coming and going. The watchful quartermaster would be making rounds for the morning inspection, so they needn't worry about explaining themselves to him. The real issue would be if Kellyeth were still inside. Reaching the final section before entering into Shurik's domain, Sedona paused and turned to Jax. Wait here, out of sight. I want to make sure Sticky Fingers isn't around. Jax swallowed, recalling Umar's words from the night before. Are you sure? What if he tries to use his magic against you? Sedona rolled her eyes. Merfolk don't have mind control powers, Jax. Umar's been listening to too many fishermen's tales. But She held up a hand, cutting off his words. You asked for my help, remember? Trust me, I know what I'm doing. Jack's lips curled slightly in a pout. Fine. Just be careful. Aye, aye, cabin boy. She winked at him, then practically bounced her way through the next doorway. Jack sighed and shook his head, then quickly found a darkened corner off to the side that would keep him covered. The creaks and groans of the wooden structure rolled in rhythm with each new pressing of the waves outside. The mid-deck above him rumbled as feet thudded their way across, followed by heavy scraping sounds of barrels being repositioned. Shurik must have had them testing their rations. Most of their stock was new and would last them for a while, but it only took one piece going bad to spoil a whole batch. Remind me once more, Miss Sedona, why I cannot simply take my meals in my quarters as I did last night. The deep voice of the bandaged man slowly grew clearer as they appeared in Jax's vicinity. Well, for one, the quartermaster's Shurik's space, not your personal bunk, sir. Well, you got away with that last evening. Trust me when I say cleanliness is kind of a big deal for him. Kellyeth snorted in his disgust. Are you implying that I am a snob? Sedona laughed awkwardly. Nothing of the sort. But my pa has quite the feast prepared for you, and goodness knows this lot wouldn't be able to deliver it without disaster. Plus, this Fahe pa can assure that each dish gets to you piping hot and fresh. Jax waited long enough for their voices to start fading again before slinking away from the shadows. Though moving quickly, he was careful to keep to the balls of his feet. Last thing he needed was to hit a creaky board and cause him to spin back around on him. Reaching Shurik's door, he gently lifted the latch and pushed it open. A slight whine of the hinges made him cringe. He bet if anything, Shurik kept those unoiled on purpose. Few were as vigilant as that man, but when it came to ghillies, vigilance only got you so far. Stepping into the room, Jax pulled the door behind him. He couldn't risk anyone noticing it ajar. Scanning around, Jax studied the room. An oil lamp burned off to the side, mixing its light with a second lantern that shone from a hook on the other side of the wall. Jax grimaced, thinking of how ticked Shurik would have been to know that the bandaged man was wasting his oil like this. Though he couldn't complain himself, as it did a decent job of lighting up the space for his search. Having at least one thing turn in his favor helped slightly bolster his courage. Shurik's bed stayed pressed up against the far wall with an inset bookshelf to the right, holding a small collection of reading materials and a few small storage jars. A brassy gold telescope had been situated almost directly in front of the shelf, leaving the center of the room fairly bare, save for a few wrinkled sheets and a pillow on the floor. Shirk must have placed himself between the door and the bed. It was a good tactic for keeping a stranger from wandering around unwatched while the crew slept. Still, for all his precautions, Kelly had slipped through. It had to have happened while Jax was with the captain last night. He recalled how Kelly had vanished from the helm after he had left the captain. Jax stepped over the sleeping pallet on the floor and made his way to the bed. It was the only logical place for Kelly to hide the map. Any place else, and Shirk had happened upon it accidentally as he readied himself in the morning. Spying a small traveler's trunk tucked between the back of the headboard and the wall, Jax swooped down to open it. He chuckled at his good fortune in finding the stranger had forgotten to fully close its latch. Popping it open, Jax carefully pried up the lid. Even for a smaller trunk, it was surprisingly bare, 1 or 2 outfit changes at best. While Jax was used to his compatriots maintaining limited costume changes, he found himself surprised that an uptight man like Kelliot wouldn't have brought more. They were still 2 weeks out from the Hollows. Jax lifted the fabric and shrugged. Maybe looking perpetually put together was just another facet of Gilly magic? For as much power and influence the Gillies had over humankind, there was precious little truly known about them. The ocean accords had made certain of that. Digging around further, Jax at last puffed out a sigh. Nothing. Closing the trunk back, he studied the carvings on the box, checking for signs of a hidden compartment. Still nothing. Setting it back on the floor as he found it, Jax settled on his stomach and pulled himself up under the bed frame. Even with the 2 oil lamps, it was nearly impossible to see under there. Pushing himself back out, he grabbed the oil lamp from the wall and placed it on the floor by the bed. Scooching back underneath, Jax smiled at himself at how much better he could now investigate. The smile soon faded as his search yet again turned up nothing. Grunting his way back out from underneath, Jax stood with the lamp in hand. Maybe tucked inside a pillowcase or beneath the mattress itself. Putting the lamp back so he could search without fear of spilling it, Jax worked his way through every pillow. When nothing came up there, he looked along every edge of the mattress. Just as he was about to give up, his fingers caught along a small slit in an underside corner. Slowly pressing his fingers in, Jax held his breath, both hoping for the map and that his fingers weren't about to be snapped in some sort of a Gilly booby trap. Pressing past the straw stuffing, his fingers grazed against the edge of a worn woolen fabric. Tugging on the corner, he could tell by the slight resistance that there had to be something wrapped inside. Managing a better hold, he withdrew the cloth, careful not to lose its inner contents. Holding the hand-sized wad up, Jax cocked an eyebrow at it. While clearly not the map, he couldn't just put it back without seeing was on the inside. Gingerly pulling back each fold, Jax's eyes widened and his mouth dropped open. There, in the palm of his hand, lay the cold, smooth moonstone. His thumb grazed over the blue-black surface. Kelliot had been able to steal it away from the captain? Jax's lungs constricted. It was worse than he thought. His thumb continued to rub across the glassy surface, heartbeat rising in his ears. He swallowed hard to relieve his throat's dryness. His eyes would not tear themselves away. A heaviness blanketed his body, sending a numbness down to his toes. The more he stared, the more the stone, he swore, had somehow drawn himself inside. His stomach churned as if he was falling in slow motion. A haze rimmed around his eyesight. Only the center of the stone remained clear. The midnight blue ever so slowly began to ripple like a recently disturbed pond. These ripples shifted into a uniform spiraling motion as the hue in the center began lightening. More and more white light pressed through the darkness. It swirled about, producing a cloudy blue on the outward radiations. Pinpoints of white twinkled throughout, dispersing across the whole stone. A breeze wafted across Jax's face, just strong enough to blow a few strands of hair across his nose. Their gentle caressing made it twitch and burn with an itch. Instinctively, his eyes started to water, and his body was immediately rocked by an intense sneeze. Wiping the tears from his eyes, Jax shook his head, his hand now closed over the stone. A coolness like a winter's breeze swept over his whole body as the feeling rushed back to his extremities. Jax jumped up from the bed and staggered a few steps as he fought for composure. What in all of Fahe had just happened? A faint pulsating went through the fist enclosing the stone. His heart fluttered with the notion of taking another peek. Jax scrunched his eyes closed and violently shook his head. He had to snap out of this. Using his free hand, he wadded the cloth back up and stuffed it into the slit in the mattress. Whatever the moonstone was, it clearly was dangerous. Even worse was the ability for this Kelliath to snatch it from under the captain's nose. Jax had a feeling it would be better for them if Kelliath didn't realize they had taken it back just yet. And as for the map, Jax spun in a slow circle. He'd have to wait on that for now. The solidity of the stone in his hand sunk in just how much out of his depth he was here. Either the bandaged man had the map on him, or there were further tricks in this room that he didn't have the time to look for. All he knew was that he couldn't let Kelliath catch him in here. A thought shot through him, making Jax nod in determination. Moonstone still in hand, Jax made sure the room was exactly as he found it, then ever so quietly snuck back out. He needed to find Shurik. The quartermaster was the captain's greatest ally. If Jax told him what was going on, he knew that Shurik would come up with the perfect plan. Weaving through the interior of the ship, Jax searched. Unsure of how much time had passed, he lost his bearings on where exactly Shurik would be in his duties. Running through the cargo hold, Jax practically smashed straight into first mate Lachlan. Though almost the same size as Jax, Lachlan stood unmovable, instead causing Jax to bounce backwards. The security officer's rough hand shot out and grabbed Jax just in time to keep him from crashing into the crate. "Slow down, kid. You're gonna hurt yourself." The gentle timbre of Lachlan's voice matched the concern in his deep blue eyes. The shadows of the cargo hold heightened their contrast against the orange hues of his skin and the dirty blonde color of his short, wavy hair and goatee. Sorry, sir," Jax mumbled as he brushed himself off and quickly stepped around the first mate. He probably should have looped the man into the situation as well, but Lachlan seemed such a meek fellow. He almost felt bad about ever putting him into harm's way. Yet another hiring oddity from his aunt that he had yet to understand. There were crew members like Eason or Umar that he got. They were both astounding at what they did, and he'd been at awe with the skill and efficiency by which Pendleton cared for the ship's woodworking repairs. But keeping on snakes like Davies or apparent pushovers like Lachlan made no sense to him. Still, his 1 year as cabin boy had shown him there was very little he truly understood. It wasn't like he wasn't an anomaly himself. Most cabin boys were supposed to start at the age of 13 at the oldest, aging out of their position by his current age. Jax shook off the perplexity and picked up his speed once more. Not wanting to risk bumping into Sedona and Kelliath on the return from the mess, he decided to reroute his way to topside. The blinding contrast of the sun to the shadows from the deck below forced Jax to pause a moment on the steps so that his eyes could adjust. Finally able to focus, Jax pressed on. Taking in a sweeping gaze across the deck, his eyes bypassed the other crew members going to and fro. The mid-morning breeze was stronger than usual, causing him to be more diligent in properly trimming the sails. The spray from the waves lapping against the sides of the Sannleika misted salt water into the air. The stiffer winds made for faster progress than usual. Jax fought with keeping his hair from blowing into his eyes, using his free hand to push it back while he continued to search for Shurik.
"Strange turn of the weather for such clear skies, eh, boy?"
Cooper shouted to him from across the way while giving more slack to the ropes. Jax paused to respond, but another gust of wind whistled around him so sharply that it stole the words from his lips and buffeted his steps to the side slightly. The moonstone in his hand started to vibrate, sending tendrils of electricity up his forearm. Jax hastened himself, finally catching sight of Shurik near the bow of the ship. The man's long silky black hair tugged fiercely against his tie, attempting to free itself by the wind. Shurik remained unbothered as it whipped back and forth around him, his entire focus zeroed in on the taut sails. Jax could just barely make out the quartermaster's orders around the whistling of the air.
"Steady now. We'll use this to our advantage. Be sure to not let them tear. They still have some mending needing done from the storms we last faced. I still say we shouldn't have left the port Maslukin before we got these stitched up right."
Simmons' voice, coming from directly behind Jack's left shoulder, made him about jump out of his skin.
"Even with your whole ordeal," he playfully slapped Jax on the back, "we could have just hid you below deck until the supplies finally came in."
Jax's ear started to burn. Are the sails really that bad of condition?
Afraid so, kid. We'll be lucky to make it to the hollows in one piece.
Jax spun around to face Simmons, heart leaping into his throat. Simmons burst into a laugh and playfully punched Jax's shoulder.
Lighten up, Smitt. You're not going to single-handedly take down the whole of the Sannleika. I'm just messing with you. We'll make it to the hollows just fine.
A wave of queasiness washed over him, sapping the strength from his legs. Knees buckling slightly, Jax pitched forward. Simmons caught him by the shoulders and steadied him once more.
Whoa now, you feeling okay? You're looking a little pale there, kid.
Jax fought to take a deep breath as a sweat broke across his brow. No, I'm fine. I just need to get to Shurek. Concern etched across Simmons' face, but he released his hold.
If you say so.
The vibrations on the moonstone heightened so that he had to consciously fight to keep his fingers closed around it. It felt as if it was trying to break free. Maybe he should just let it go. No, not after how it had entranced him before. Well, then he could at least just drop it into his pocket. The rot pulsated once more. He couldn't risk that either. It might just jump straight out again. Jax finally stepped away from Simmons and started his way across the deck to the bow. Cabin boy! The panic shout bounced through the tumultuous current and finally landed on Jax's ears. Jax Smitt, stop! Sedona's cry grew louder. Jax looked behind him to see Sedona running straight at him and Kellyeth close behind.
Give it back, boy! You must give me the stone!
Kellyeth roared. Jax opened his mouth to speak, but stopped as a harsh gust of wind whipped around him and in tight spirals. Its force lifted up the hand holding the stone. Without thinking, Jax opened his hand and allowed the moonstone to lay exposed to the sun. Sedona tried to rush over to him, but was immediately pushed back by the winds whipping around Jax. The air seemed to emanate from the stone itself, enclosing him in his own little vortex. The intensity stung his eyes and lashed his hair about. Beyond his hurricane, you could barely make out others shouting at him as they grabbed whatever they could to keep him being blown off the ship. The winds began to widen their circular pattern, pushing outward from Jax. Crying out, Jax attempted to force his hand closed once more, but nothing on his body would budge. Again, his vortex increased in size. He didn't know what to do. Looking back out on the crew, he saw that Kellyeth was trying to struggle to make his way towards them in spite of the fearsome gale. The radius of the wind suddenly burst outward and moved their focus from Jax to encapsulate the sails. The instant they did so, everyone fell back on deck. Jax, too, collapsed. As he did so, Kellyeth pounced, grabbing the stone in one hand and tucking Jax under his other arm. All strength zapped from his body. Jax could only lay as a ragdoll in the man's arm.
Button down! It's not over yet!
Kellyeth boomed over his shoulder. Everyone on deck did their best to scramble to a location they could latch onto. The winds on the sails coalesced into one vicious stream, and the Sannleika burst forward. Somehow the sails were able to take the beating without being rent in twain. A sudden increase in knots thrust everyone not tied down toward the stern of the ship. Kellyeth used his body as a shield to keep Jax from smashing against the railing. After a moment, as the winds kept their steady pace, the crew was able to regain their footing. Wobbly legs fumbled around the deck as shouts lifted from different areas. The randomized bounce of the ship as it chopped through the waters made everyone jolt around now and again. Captain Jones flung the door to her cabin open, her hair wild as a banshee and eyes of fire. Scooping up Umar from the deck in front of her, she locked eyes with Pendleton, who was untying himself from the mast. Pendleton, Cooper, get below deck and make sure the hull holds up. Verifying Umar wasn't injured as he stood, she ordered him to check in with Lachlan below for a status report. The three men scrambled below deck as Shurek commanded the third mate, boatswain, and deckhand to secure the riggings. Simmons rushed to Sedona's side, helping her to make her way to the helm. Passing the captain as they went, Verity called out to them. Steer as best as you can, but do not fight against these winds. They'll surely capsize us otherwise. Verity whipped her head over to Kellyeth, who still sat against the side railing, cradling an immobile Jax in his lap. Mr. Kellyeth! Her fury screeched out. What have you done to my ship? She staggeringly stomped over to him. Kellyeth slowly pulled himself upright, allowing Jax to continue to ragdoll in the crook of his arm.
Your cabin boy activated the moonstone.
Verity halted in front of him, eyeing her nephew,
a large groan escaping her lips. "Jax, boy, what am I to do with you?" She looked back up to Kellyeth. "Will he be out for long?" Kellyeth wrestled the boy slightly. "Oh no, he's conscious. He just used all his strength. I'm sure he'll be himself once we reach our destination." "And where exactly would that be?" "I had yet to determine the stone's endpoint before your cabin boy set it off. Now we shall wait for what comes next. Pray, Captain, that this stone's original owner was not of a sadistic temperament." More than an hour passed by the time that Jax was able to stand on his own once again, though all he wanted to do was find a hole to bury himself in. From what he'd gathered, the captain not only knew that Kellyeth had the moonstone, but that she had ordered he investigated under the watchful eyes of Shurik. Jax's whole body shouted their aches at him, but he couldn't just cower in the corner. Pressing on, he found ways to make sure he was useful. "Is it just my imagination, or is she starting to slow down?" Third mate Farron announced to no one in particular. Everyone cast their eyes to the sails. The previous strain against the fabric had slackened considerably. Then in a blink, it shut off entirely, leaving them hanging loose. The Sannleika took a minute to slow its pace due to inertia. All winds around them suddenly died, and the sea itself became eerily smooth. Simmons walked to the port side to better look out. "Where are we?" Shurik spun in a slow, calculated circle. "Somewhere we shouldn't be, I'm sure." The silence all around deeply unnerved Jax. The ocean wasn't meant to be this quiet. A subtle gurgling pricked Jax's ears, making him rush starboard. Almost adjacent to the ship itself, a flurry of bubbles rushed to the surface. "I don't like that," Farron muttered to himself as he leaned over the side next to Jax. Waters churned and continued to grow as, at the center, something orange and brown started to emerge. "What is that?" Sedona shouted down from her vantage point at the helm. "Some sort of coral, maybe?" Farron answered. Jax willed his eyes to see clearer. As he studied the form, he got the unsettling notion that it was looking back at him. His stomach dropped. That's because it was looking back at him. "That's a giant eye!" Jax shouted. Get back! Everyone back!" Kelly yelled out his order, but was silenced as the ship-sized octopus burst full force from the waters. The whole of the Sannleika rocked back, throwing Jax and Farron down on the deck. Simmons cried out as he was flung over the railing, but the captain and Shurik were both able to snag him before he plummeted to the waters below. Hoisting him back over, the captain barked her orders over her shoulder. "Everyone, battle ready now! Hold for my mark!" Farron and Jax fought to right themselves. "It's the great octoid beast of Mustaris," Kellyeth announced. "Do not provoke it, Captain. We may be able to convince it to let us be." "I hear you, Mr. Kellyeth, but my crew will stand at the ready just in case." Giant orange tentacles rose from the water, raining down ocean runoff on all below. The octoid beast hooked its suction cups on the starboard side railing and tilted the entire ship towards it. The crew cried out as they slid around, snagging anything they could to stop themselves. Farron snatched a rope just in time, but as he reached for Jax, he was too late. Jax went careening towards the beast, smacking up against the wooden siding hard enough that it winded him. "Hang on, Jax!" Shouts echoed from behind him. His heart merely bursting from his chest. He white-knuckled his grip on the side. Closer and closer, the octoid pulled the ship to itself, stopping only when Jax was almost right against its eye. Sweat poured down Jax's neck as he strained to keep from toppling over. He grit his teeth and stared down the beast. Oh, how he wished he were safely docked in the hollows! In a breath, the beast loosed its hold, causing the Sannleika to rock violently back to the other side. Jax flung backwards through the air, but was yanked back down as a stiff grip pulled on his overcoat. "Gotcha!" Farron shouted as his face twisted in pain as his right arm strained against the rope and his left pulled Jax in closer. Not wasting a second, Farron quickly tied Jax down as well. "We're not done yet!" Sedona shouted down from the helm. "He's going to the stem!" "Secure yourself!" Verity shouted, the command quickly echoed by everyone across the ship.
Mr. Smitt, what did you say to the beast?
Kellyeth cried out. What? Jax shouted back, dazed.
What command did you give him?
I gave him no command! The Sannleika lurched forward as, yet again, the octoid attached itself to the ship, this time grasping onto the bow. Before anyone could act, the ship was suddenly off once more, this time being swiftly dragged onward by the monstrous octopus. Alright, guys. And that is the end of Chapter 4. Okay. Whew. Yes, a bit more of an intense chapter this time around. So, yes, Jax, I think I saw Bree mention that he had done messed up, and yeah. Maybe he'll be a misunderstood monster. There's a possibility. I now have on the screen here, as I can angle properly, your choices for the next chapter. So where are we at for you to decide? Decision number 1 that you get to choose to. 1. Should they attack the octoid beast so that it releases the ship? Or 2. Should they allow the beast to take them to whatever mysterious location that he's dragging them? And then the next option is, should Jax confront Kellyeth about stealing the moonstone from the captain in front of the whole crew? Or should he convince the captain, Shirk, and Sedona to have a private meeting about the moonstone and who Kellyeth really is? I got a vote, so 1 for B on both. So let them take the mysterious location and have a private meeting with the captain. And again, whatever is voted the most, those are the decisions that will happen in the next chapter. And I got another for B on both. Okay. And I'm going to let this vote stay open till through Wednesday. So you guys will have a little while to make sure and tell everybody else. It looks like we have kind of a resounding. We both vote to allow the beast to take them to the new location. I think everybody has a tenderness toward the great octopus. That's pretty great. And I did see a comment in there asking if I had done all of the drawings on this. Pretty much all of them. The only ones that I hadn't done, let me see if I can go back. Some of them I was able to use as a stock file image. Like this one, I didn't do myself. And the backdrop for these ones I didn't do. But the rest of those drawings, yes, those are all me. And that's something that I want to continue to do. I see Daniel said, if it's big enough to rock the ship, it's big enough to sink it. You're not wrong. That's exactly, this is the truth. It is big enough to sink it. One of my goals to do from here on out is I want to try to keep it a bit more visually stimulating by having images going throughout. Both going for the private meeting also. Very curious. Okay. And I'd also be curious to hear your guys' take on Kellyeth, because I know at the start we had people who were quite suspicious of him, not trusting, didn't know if he was a good person or not. Jax is still of the opinion that he is a gilly, which is their derogatory term for a merfolk person. Jen says they're not concerned about tenderness, but it is attack, and they would probably be eaten by it. And see, that's a valid point, because depending on what you vote can massively affect what happens. As a little insider thing there, the previous time it was voted that Jax go gamble with Davies to learn more about Kellyeth, and the other options were that he go finish his chores with Eason, or he go talk to the captain. And the realization was that if he hadn't gone to gamble with Davies, he would have actually learned some insider information. But because it was voted to go with Davies, we didn't get to know some more stuff.
I've seen that Richie personified the octopus when she mentioned he looked sad. Now she can't unsee it. That's great. So, alright, well, if we have enough people, so far we're doing okay with everybody seeming on the same page of both B and B options. Maybe we'll get to learn more about this giant beast and see if the crew makes it, and if Jax can handle getting in trouble yet again. Next time we will be meeting will again be the end of the month, so that will be, let me look at the calendar. Yes, the next installment, the last Saturday of the month, so that'll be May 28th, same time, 7:45, same place, here on Choose the Mouse. And again, the voting stage will stay open until this Wednesday, which is May the 6th. So by midnight, May 7th, all votes are closed. Yes, it's a long weekend. Okay. Doesn't really affect me. My schedule's a bit different, long weekend stuff wise. So yes, thank you guys so much for coming out. Appreciate you commenting in the chat, giving your theories, reacting. It's been being a hungry sea monster could be quite lonely. I mean, yeah, you know, it's hard to find other creatures to go out for lunch with you. And I've just had a blast having you guys coming back and responding and voting and getting into the story. It's been a lot of fun, and I look forward to the next time. So again, May 28th, I'll see you then. The first Tuesday of this coming month will be the next live stream for gaming live stream for Ori and the Blind Forest, so a typical video gaming pathway. But thank you guys so much for coming out, and I'll see you another time. Bye, everybody!